the whole vast West becomes one big dusty roundup.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Table Talk. We're back here in the office. Imagine that. It's kind of become a norm. But today we're going to talk a little bit about fertility and some things we can measure and how we can improve our herds and the breed as a whole as we use instruments like this.
I think one thing on fertility and reproductive traits is they're probably the most valuable traits to us. I know we sell cattle by the pound, but if we're not putting cattle or calves on the ground every year due to some sort of reproductive or fertility issue, we're losing out. Mm-hmm. So a live calf is worth more than no calf. So pounds do matter. That's what we sell. We have to look at that. But we really do need to focus on fertility and reproduction. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good topic to talk about. And it's one of those topics that's a little different because when we talk about weight traits and things like that, they're pretty easy to select for because the heritability is much greater than you see in reproductive traits.
Right. Now, this, if you've never seen one or used one, it's a pretty simple instrument that really can make a big difference. Just scrotal tape. At what point do we go from here to another fertility tool?
I think scrotal tapes are extremely important. Taking scrotal measurements is a big deal because it's been shown time and time again that bulls with a larger scrotal circumference have daughters that reach puberty faster. So that allows them to get bred at a younger age, have that first calf by 2, in theory. When you don't have that minimum acceptable scrotal circumference, I believe you need to castrate. You need to look at removing that bull from the gene pool.
Now, if they don't have that minimum, if they're not going to pass a BSC or breeding status exam, they're not going to be a functional male in a herd. They do need to be removed from that herd.
To me, bulls are actually the easiest to look at in terms of fertility, because of tools like scrotal tapes, having BSEs where you see the motility and everything of the sperm, if his sperm's good. Bulls are a little bit easier on the fertility side for me. Cows are where it becomes a little more difficult. Yes, you can do some things like pelvic measurements, but that's really for looking at calving ease later on down in the future. You can go in and you can feel the maturity of the reproductive tract, but it's not as simple as what we see with bulls. So we have to keep more records on cows. Pregnancy records, which I hope everybody keeps. You can turn those into us at BBU. There's forms online to use.
And it's a simple form.
Very simple. Animal ID, insert number. If you AI'd them, when did you AI? If you turned a bull out with them, when did you turn the bull out? And then were they bred or not? And then did they have the calf?
So what's BBU doing with that form as they get submitted?
So what we'd really like to do is come up with a heifer pregnancy EPD. Right now we're actually unveiling 2 new EPDs here fairly shortly. An age at first calf EPD, which is going to take the yearling contemporary groups of heifers and then have some splits in there to make the contemporary groups to where if they're bred to calve at 2 or 30 months or 36 months, there's splits in the contemporary group for that. But it's going to look at, is that heifer likely to calve earlier in the breeding season? Mm-hmm. So when you look at that number, you'll see that number when it comes out, you're going to look for a lower number, just like you would with birth weight. You want that heifer that's going to calve earlier in the season. It's the same thing with cows. You want the ones that calve earlier in their breeding season. It gives them a little more time to put on condition, come back in, and get bred again, and have that shorter calving period. The other EPD we're rolling out that has to deal with reproductive efficiency is stayability. That's an industry standard, and that looks at do we expect that cow to be in the herd at 5 years of age having a calf? 5 years of age is about when, if you look at economic research, that's when you see cows breaking even and paying for themselves, is about 5 years of age when you look at all the input costs. So this looks at, will she stay till 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the number in that case, the more likely she is to stay to 5 years and beyond and have a calf. So this requires proper disposal codes for anybody that's on WHR, IVR. Make sure you record the proper disposal codes so that we know, do we penalize this cow because she didn't have a calf, or, did she have some sort of illness that prevented it? So we don't want to penalize animals that don't need to be penalized.
Right. So really, I'm going to go back a step into submitting some pregnancy reports. Something that as we've talked about with producers in the past, there's this fear of, well, I've got this donor cow in a group and I flushed her and brought her back in with a later group or something of that nature. Or maybe, I breed my heifers at a later time, let them mature a little more before they have their first calf. Does that penalize a female if you do that?
No, because they will be excluded from that. The donors, and like I said, on the age of first calf. So if you're holding heifers so you can get them to calve at 30 months instead of 24 months, you're looking at 2.5-year-olds. So we've split it to where those that are bred to calve at 30 months, calve at 30 months. And the interesting, I don't guess it's really that interesting, but when you look at the distribution of calving in Beefmaster, there's 3 peaks. The first peak is the biggest, and it's at 2 years of age. Mm-hmm. Then the next peak, a little bit smaller, at 2.5. And then the next peak at 3 years of age, and smaller than those. But there's 3 peaks, so there are people that hold them and let them breed later to let that heifer reach a little bit more maturity before they get bred. But we have accounted for that.
Okay, so that's really comforting to me and to a lot of producers, that just because my management style is a little bit different than somebody else, my cattle don't get penalized for that. And it's just like we've discussed before about the importance of a contemporary group. You need multiple animals in it. You need to keep them in that group as much as possible to help our database. And I think it just ties in so well with it, and it's such a huge need.
Oh, it's a big need. It's huge. It's one of the biggest things that we've been requested from different sources outside of the breed, from commercial buyers, because they are buying our animals to produce replacement females. So they want some true measures of female fertility in there. These are lowly heritable traits, but with selection you can improve those traits. And the best thing about these lowly heritable traits, when you cross these animals and use these Beefmaster bulls on a set of Angus cows or set of any other breed cows, you really see that heterosis pop most on those lowly heritable traits that deal with fertility and reproduction.
Now, something that a commercial producer may ask us is, I've started using this Beefmaster identity chip, trying to get the most information on my commercial females that I'm keeping back as a replacement. Is that something, having access to those traits, is that something we can do through that panel?
As we incorporate these traits in our EPDs, the markers will be there. We can incorporate that into the panel. These EPDs also will eventually be incorporated into our $M or our maternal index. So these are really going to help us. They're going to strengthen a lot of things for our breed and really promote us in the direction that we've been pushing through the industry, that we are the maternal breed of choice for the commercial county.